Wealthy widower vows never to love again until he sees his daughter's nanny. She brought life to a house marked by silence and forgotten laughter. But when he finally felt something real, fear made him push her away. Now, alone among the ruins of what he didn't have the courage to experience, he races against time to avoid losing everything again. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. We'll continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. The living room clock marked 7:15 in the morning when William Anderson descended the cold marble stairs, adjusting his Italian tie with the same mechanical precision as every day. His steps echoed through the wide hallway, momentarily breaking the silence that dominated the mansion since he had awakened. The house, with its spacious rooms and furniture made of fine wood, seemed larger than it really was when inhabited by only two people who barely spoke to each other. In the kitchen, he found the table set for two: fresh orange juice, golden toast, imported strawberry jam, and still steaming scrambled eggs. Everything arranged perfectly by Mrs. Jenkins, the housekeeper who had worked there for more than 10 years and knew every detail of the family's morning routine. William sat in his usual chair, opened the newspaper, and began reading the financial headlines while methodically chewing. Emma, his 7-year-old daughter, appeared a few minutes later, still wearing her pink unicorn print pajamas. Her brown hair was disheveled, and she carried a worn rag doll. The girl approached the table in silence, sat in the chair opposite her father, and began to play with her food without much interest. William briefly raised his eyes above the newspaper, observed his daughter for a few seconds, and returned to reading. The morning routine always followed the same ritual. He would finish his coffee, mechanically kiss the top of Emma's head, and leave for another day at the office. She would stay with the current nanny, attend private piano and English lessons, eat lunch alone at the big table, and spend afternoons playing in the garden or watching cartoons in the TV room. When William returned, around 8 in the evening, Emma was already asleep. But on that specific morning, something interrupted the established pattern. Mrs. Jenkins entered the kitchen with a worried expression on her face, holding a white envelope in her hands. William immediately noticed that something was different in the housekeeper's behavior, who always showed herself to be discreet and efficient in her duties. "Mr. Anderson, I need to speak with you," she said hesitantly. "It's about Mrs. Wilson." William folded the newspaper slowly, already imagining what would come next. Nancy Wilson was the 5th nanny Emma had had in 2 years, a middle-aged woman, serious and competent, who seemed to have finally created a stable routine with the girl. Or at least that's what William believed until that moment. "She resigned last night," continued Mrs. Jenkins, extending the envelope. "She said she can no longer deal with the situation, that the girl needs something she cannot offer." William took the letter and read it quickly. Nancy explained in a few formal lines that she was leaving the job for personal reasons. She thanked for the opportunity and wished the best for the family. Not a word more, no detailed explanation. Just confirmation that one more person had given up on being part of their lives. Emma continued eating in silence, apparently oblivious to the conversation happening a few feet from her. But William noticed how she held her breath when she heard conversations about nannies, how her eyes remained alert even when she pretended to be distracted. The girl had learned very early that the people who took care of her had a habit of disappearing without warning. William sighed and tucked the letter into his jacket's inner pocket. Once again, he would need to deal with the process of finding someone new, conducting interviews, explaining the house routine, and hoping that this time the chosen person would stay longer. The cycle repeated with a frequency that bothered him more than he would like to admit. "Mrs. Jenkins, you can contact the agency today. I need someone to start as soon as possible," he said, opening the newspaper again as if the conversation had ended. "Actually, sir," the housekeeper continued, "I already have a recommendation. My cousin works for a family in Riverside Heights and knows a young woman who's looking for a job. She has experience with children and very good references. She could come here this afternoon for a conversation." William raised his eyes again. It wasn't common for Mrs. Jenkins to suggest candidates on her own. Usually they resorted to specialized agencies that sent resumes and did a pre-selection. But considering the recent history of resignations, perhaps it was time to try a different approach. "What's her name?" he asked. "Sophia Mitchell, 32 years old, single. She worked for some years in a hospital but decided to change fields. She's been taking care of children for 2 years and the families were very satisfied with her work. William nodded briefly. He didn't have time to be too demanding under the current circumstances. Emma needed someone responsible and reliable, someone who could keep the house functioning without creating unnecessary complications. If Mrs. Jenkins' recommendation was minimally adequate, it would be sufficient. All right, schedule for 3 in the afternoon, but make it clear that this is a trial period. I don't want to create unnecessary expectations for Emma. The housekeeper nodded and left the kitchen, leaving father and daughter alone again. William returned to reading, but noticed that Emma had stopped eating and was watching him with an expression he couldn't completely decipher. There was curiosity there, but also a premature resignation that bothered him. "Daddy, did Miss Nancy leave like the others?" asked the girl with a naturalness that sounded strange to her father's ears. William folded the newspaper once more and looked directly at his daughter. Emma had her mother's eyes, large and expressive, but they carried a seriousness that a 7-year-old shouldn't have. He realized at that moment how he had gotten used to that forced maturity, how he had normalized the fact that his daughter didn't ask questions or show sadness when people disappeared from her life. "She needed to solve some personal matters," he answered, using the same generic explanation he always offered in these situations. "But today, we'll talk to a new person, a lady who might stay with us longer." Emma nodded and returned to playing with her food, as if the answer was exactly what she expected to hear. William felt a strange discomfort when he realized how his daughter had learned not to form attachments, how she had developed protection mechanisms that mirrored, in a way, his own mechanisms. The rest of the morning passed quickly. William lost himself in office meetings, in profit and loss spreadsheets, in decisions involving millions of dollars and hundreds of employees. His construction company was expanding to 3 states and demanded total attention. There, in the corporate environment, he felt in absolute control. Each decision had predictable consequences, each problem had a logical solution, and each investment could be calculated with mathematical precision. When he returned home in the middle of the afternoon, he found Mrs. Jenkins arranging the living room. She had chosen the most formal environment in the house to receive the candidate, which indicated that she took the recommendation seriously. William went up to his room, changed from his suit into more casual clothes, and came down again to wait. At 3 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. William watched through the living room window as Mrs. Jenkins opened the gate. The woman entering the garden was different from what he expected. She didn't wear very formal clothes or carry a folder full of documents. She wore a simple white blouse, dark jeans, and white sneakers. Her light brown hair was tied in a low ponytail, and she walked with calm steps without apparent haste or nervousness. Sophia Mitchell had a serene presence that could be perceived from a distance. She wasn't exactly beautiful in the conventional sense, but there was something in her face that conveyed confidence without arrogance, kindness without submission. When Mrs. Jenkins led her to the living room, she greeted William with a firm handshake and a discreet smile. "Good afternoon, Mr. Anderson. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you." William gestured for her to sit in the armchair in front of the sofa where he was. Mrs. Jenkins offered coffee, which Sophia politely accepted, and withdrew to leave them talking. For a few seconds, they observed each other in silence, each making their initial assessment. The first thing William noticed was that Sophia didn't seem anxious to impress him. She awaited his questions with tranquility, without trying to fill the silence with unnecessary conversation. She didn't check her watch or nervously fiddle with her hands. She just waited, demonstrating a patience that previous candidates hadn't shown. "Mrs. Jenkins told me you have experience with children," he began. "Can you tell me a little about your previous work?" Sophia nodded slightly before responding. "I worked for 5 years as a pediatric nurse at Memorial Hospital. After that, I decided to change fields and started taking care of children at home. In the last 2 years, I've worked with 3 different families. I can provide references from all of them if necessary." Her voice was soft but firm, without hesitation or insecurity. William noticed that she wasn't trying to sell an image of herself, just presenting the facts directly. This surprised him positively, considering that most previous candidates had tried too hard to seem perfect. "Why did you decide to leave nursing?" he asked, curious about the radical career change. Sophia paused for a moment before answering, as if carefully choosing her words. "I realized I needed a more personal, closer job. At the hospital, I took care of many children at the same time, but didn't have the opportunity to follow their development in the long term. I wanted something where I could make a more significant difference in the life of a specific family. William nodded, appreciating the honesty of the answer. Sophia hadn't invented a dramatic story or tried to evoke pity. She had simply explained her motivation in a mature and sensible way. This was exactly the kind of approach he valued in employees. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, covering practical topics such as schedules, responsibilities, and expectations. William explained Emma's routine, mentioned private classes and extracurricular activities. Sophia listened attentively, asking pertinent questions about the girl's personality, her likes, and her specific needs. She showed no hurry to end the interview, or anxiety to know the result. When William was about to end the conversation, Emma appeared at the door of the room. The girl had changed from her pajamas into a navy blue dress and tied her hair with a white band. She remained standing at the entrance, observing Sophia with the same cautious expression she always used when meeting someone new. "Emma, come here," said William, gesturing for his daughter to approach. "This is Sophia. She came to talk with us about the possibility of taking care of you." The girl walked slowly to where they were, keeping a safe distance from Sophia. Her large, serious eyes studied every detail of the unknown woman, looking for signs that might indicate if this person would also disappear in a few weeks. Sophia didn't try to force an interaction. She didn't extend her hand to greet Emma or make exaggerated comments about how beautiful she was. Instead, she just smiled discreetly and said naturally, "Hi, Emma. I'm Sophia. It's nice to meet you." The simplicity of the approach seemed to partially disarm the girl's defenses. Emma responded with an almost inaudible hi and continued observing. Sophia didn't insist on forced conversation. She turned her attention back to William and said she would very much like to work with them if accepted. William made his decision at that moment. There was something in Sophia's calm demeanor that convinced him she could be different from the previous ones. She didn't seem desperate for the job or overly enthusiastic about the prospect. She demonstrated a genuine but balanced interest, exactly what he was looking for. "Very well, Sophia. If you can start tomorrow, the position is yours. Mrs. Jenkins will explain all the practical details and show you the room you can use here in the house if you prefer." Sophia thanked him with the same serenity she had demonstrated throughout the conversation. She stood up, said goodbye politely, and followed Mrs. Jenkins to see the house. Emma remained in the room with her father, watching through the window as the two women talked in the garden. "What did you think of her?" William asked, curious about his daughter's first impression. Emma took a few seconds to respond, as if organizing her thoughts. "She didn't try to hug me," she finally said. "The others always tried to hug me right at the beginning." William realized that for Emma, that was a positive point. The girl had learned to distrust exaggerated demonstrations of affection coming from strangers. Sophia had instinctively respected Emma's personal space, allowing her to approach at her own pace. The next morning, Sophia arrived punctually at 7 o'clock. She brought a small suitcase and a bag with some personal belongings. Mrs. Jenkins received her and led her to the room that would be hers, located on the second floor, close to Emma's room. It was a comfortable environment with a single bed, a spacious wardrobe, a reading armchair, and a private bathroom. William had already left for the office when Sophia finished settling in. Emma was having breakfast alone in the kitchen as usual when the new nanny came down to officially introduce herself. The girl raised her eyes from her bowl of cereal and waved timidly. "Good morning, Emma. How did you sleep?" asked Sophia, pouring herself a cup of coffee and sitting at the table, but not immediately next to the girl. She chose a chair that allowed conversation without invading Emma's personal space. "Well," responded Emma, returning to stir her cereal. "Are you going to stay here a long time?" It wasn't exactly a question. Emma had formulated the phrase as a statement, but Sophia perceived the insecurity behind the words. The girl wanted to know if she could allow herself to create some kind of bond, or if she should keep emotional barriers raised. "I hope to stay," Sophia responded honestly. "I really liked meeting you and your father yesterday, and this house is very beautiful. You can show me your favorite places here after breakfast." Emma nodded slightly, but Sophia noticed a different sparkle in her eyes. It was the first time someone had asked her to show the house, instead of simply exploring the environments on their own. That made her feel important, as if her opinion about her own home was relevant. After breakfast, Emma led Sophia through the main rooms of the mansion. She showed the library with its tall shelves full of books she still didn't know how to read, the TV room where she watched cartoons, the garden with the pool where she rarely played. When they reached her room, Emma hesitated at the door. "This is my room," she said, but didn't immediately enter. "The other nannies always messed with my things." Sophia understood the message. "I can see from a distance if you want to show, but I'll only enter when you invite me." Emma smiled for the first time since Sophia had arrived. It was a small and still cautious smile, but genuine. She opened the door completely and gestured for Sophia to enter. The room was spacious and well decorated with a canopy bed, a study desk, a shelf full of toys and children's books. But Sophia noticed that everything was extremely organized, almost as if little was used. "Do you like to draw?" asked Sophia, observing a table with colored pencils and blank sheets. "Sometimes," answered Emma, "but I'm not very good. Can I see some of your drawings?" Emma walked to the desk and took a folder where she kept her artistic productions. They were typical drawings of a 7-year-old child, colorful and creative. Sophia examined them with genuine attention, making positive comments about the colors chosen and the details that Emma had included. "This one is very beautiful," said Sophia, pointing to a drawing of a house with a garden. "You drew your house," Emma nodded. "But I always draw the house empty. I never know who to put in it." The phrase hit Sophia harder than the girl could imagine. Emma had summarized in a few words the loneliness she felt even living in a luxurious mansion. She didn't know who to put in her drawings because she wasn't sure who really was part of her life permanently. Sophia spent the rest of the morning getting to know Emma's routine. She accompanied the piano lesson, where she noticed that the girl had natural talent but little enthusiasm. During the English class, she noticed that Emma was intelligent and learned quickly, but seemed unmotivated. At lunch, she observed that the girl ate little and in silence, as if she had lost the habit of talking during meals. In the afternoon, when Emma was doing her homework, Sophia took the opportunity to talk with Mrs. Jenkins about the family's history. The housekeeper, who had worked in the house since before William's marriage, told about the happy times when his wife was still alive, about how the house was full of life and laughter. "Mrs. Anderson was a very cheerful woman," Mrs. Jenkins recounted while preparing dinner. "She sang while cooking, decorated the house with flowers from the garden, threw parties for friends. When she passed away, it was as if the light of the house went out. Mr. Anderson was never the same again." Sophia listened in silence, understanding better the family dynamics. William had closed himself emotionally after losing his wife, and Emma had grown up in an environment where expressions of affection were rare. The girl had learned not to expect much from people, not to get too attached, to accept loneliness as something normal. That night, when William returned from work, he found a slightly different scene than usual. Emma was in the living room doing a puzzle with Sophia. The two were talking quietly about the missing pieces, and now and then Emma laughed at some comment from the nanny. It wasn't a dramatic transformation, but there was a different energy in the environment. William remained standing at the entrance of the room for a few minutes, observing the interaction. Emma seemed more relaxed than he had seen her in a long time. Sophia didn't force conversations or try to be excessively animated. She just shared the moment naturally, allowing the girl to dictate the pace of the approach. "Good evening, Daddy," said Emma when she finally noticed her father's presence. "Sophia is helping me with the puzzle. It's quite difficult." William greeted Sophia with a nod and approached to see the progress of the puzzle. It was an image of a flowery field with 1,000 pieces, certainly a challenge for a 7-year-old child. But Emma seemed determined to finish it, and Sophia encouraged her without rushing. "How was the first day?" asked William, addressing Sophia. "Very good. Emma showed me the entire house, and we talked about many things. She's a very intelligent and well-mannered girl." William nodded, noting that Sophia hadn't made exaggerated compliments or tried to impress him with stories about extraordinary achievements. She had simply described the day in an honest and direct way, exactly as he appreciated. "Emma, have you had dinner?" he asked. "Not yet, Daddy. Sophia said we can have dinner together when you arrived if you wanted to." William was surprised. It was rare for Emma to suggest that they share a meal. Usually she had dinner alone while he worked in his office, reviewing documents, and preparing for the next day. The idea of sitting at the table as a family hadn't occurred to him in a long time. "Of course," he replied after a brief hesitation. "Let's have dinner together." Mrs. Jenkins had already prepared the table for 3 people, as if she knew that would be a different night. During dinner, Sophia facilitated the conversation without dominating it. She asked Emma questions about her classes, encouraged her to tell about the progress of the puzzle, and included William in the conversations whenever possible. William noticed that Emma talked more that night than she had talked to him in weeks. The girl told about a book she was reading, about a drawing she wanted to make, about a song she had learned on the piano. Sophia listened with genuine attention, asking questions that showed real interest in the answers. After dinner, William withdrew to his office as usual, but this time he left the door ajar and could hear the sounds coming from the living room. Emma and Sophia continued working on the puzzle, talking about various subjects. Emma's tone of voice was different, more animated and spontaneous. When William went up to sleep around 10:30, he found Emma brushing her teeth in the bathroom. The girl was wearing her favorite pajamas, the unicorn ones, and humming a quiet melody. "How was the day with Sophia?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. "It was good, Daddy. She doesn't yell or get angry when I don't understand something, and she said we can finish the puzzle tomorrow if I want to." William nodded and kissed his daughter's forehead, as he always did before she went to sleep. But that night, Emma spontaneously hugged him, something that hadn't happened in a long time. The hug was quick and shy but meaningful. As he walked to his own room, William reflected on the small changes he had observed on that first day. Sophia had brought a different energy to the house, a tranquility that allowed Emma to express herself more freely. There was nothing dramatic or artificial in her approach, just a serene presence that seemed to do the girl good. The following weeks brought subtle but noticeable changes to the house routine. Sophia had found a delicate balance between respecting Emma's space and offering her new possibilities. She didn't try to revolutionize the girl's life, but introduced small alterations that made a difference in her mood and disposition. One morning, William came down for breakfast and found Emma helping Sophia prepare pancakes. The girl was standing on a stool stirring the batter with a wooden spoon, while Sophia supervised next to the stove. The two were animatedly talking about the recipe, and Emma laughed when some drops of batter splashed onto the counter. "Good morning, Daddy," said Emma cheerfully when she saw him enter the kitchen. "We're making special pancakes. Sophia taught me how to make the heart shape." William observed the scene with a mixture of surprise and something he couldn't completely identify. Emma seemed genuinely happy, something he hadn't seen in a long time. There was flour on her hands, a bit of batter on her face, and a spontaneous smile that completely transformed her expression. "Looks delicious," he said, sitting at the table. "May I try it?" "Of course, Daddy, but you have to wait until I finish yours. It'll be the most beautiful of all." Sophia served coffee for William and continued helping Emma with the pancakes. She didn't make exaggerated comments about how William should be proud of his daughter or try to forcibly include him in the activity. She just allowed the moment to flow naturally, leaving space for him to participate if he wanted to. William observed the two for a few minutes before getting up to help. He took plates from the shelf and napkins from the drawer, organizing the table while Emma finished cooking. It was the first time in years that he actively participated in a domestic activity, and he discovered that it wasn't unpleasant. When they sat down to eat, Emma was radiant. She told about how she had learned to flip the pancakes without breaking them, about the different shapes she could make, and about a recipe for little cakes that Sophia had promised to teach the following week. William listened, asking occasional questions and noticing how his daughter became more communicative when she felt really listened to. After breakfast, William had to leave for an important meeting, but something made him hesitate at the kitchen door. He turned to Sophia and said, "Thank you for the pancakes. It was different, in a good way." Sophia smiled discreetly and nodded. "Emma was happy to cook for you. She loves doing special things for people she likes." Sophia's observation echoed in William's mind throughout the morning. He hadn't realized how Emma demonstrated affection through small gestures, how she looked for ways to please the important people in her life. Sophia was teaching her to express this love in a practical and creative way. That afternoon, when he returned home earlier than usual due to a cancelled meeting, William found Sophia and Emma in the garden. The girl was planting flower seedlings in small pots, with her hands dirty with soil and a straw hat protecting her from the sun. Sophia was holding a hose, watering the already planted plants and explaining about the necessary care for each species. "Hi, Daddy," shouted Emma when she saw him approaching. "Look at the garden we're making. Each little pot has a different flower, and Sophia said I can take care of them every day." William crouched beside his daughter to examine the work. Emma had chosen colorful flowers, daisies, petunias, begonias, and organized the pots harmoniously around the pool area. There was planning in that improvised garden, but also the spontaneity typical of a child who was genuinely having fun. "It's looking beautiful," he said, and he really thought so. "You have good taste for colors." "Thank you, Daddy." Sophia said that, "When the flowers grow, we'll make bouquets to decorate the house, and we can also cook with some of them. Did you know you can eat flowers?" William looked at Sophia, who was smiling discreetly while rolling up the hose. "No, I didn't know that. How interesting." "Sophia knows many different things," continued Emma, animated. "She taught me how to make bracelets with elastic bands, how to fold napkins in beautiful ways, and how to make homemade modeling clay. And she also told me stories about when she worked at the hospital and took care of sick children." William realized that Sophia had found a way to share her past experiences without traumatizing Emma. Instead of hiding her history as a nurse, she used it to teach, to entertain, and to show the girl how care can take different forms. During dinner that night, Emma asked permission to tell her father about everything she had learned in the last few weeks. She talked about cooking recipes, gardening techniques, educational games, and stories that Sophia told before bedtime. William listened with growing attention, noticing how his daughter was developing under the positive influence of the nanny. "Daddy, can I ask a question?" said Emma at the end of dinner. "Of course, you can ask anything. Why did Mommy have to go away?" The question caught William off guard. Emma rarely talked about her mother, and he had gotten used to that silence. For a moment, he didn't know how to respond. Sophia remained silent, but William noticed that she was paying attention to the conversation, ready to intervene if necessary. "Your mother didn't want to leave, Emma," he finally said, carefully choosing his words. "She became very sick when you were born, and the doctors couldn't cure her. But she loved you very much, and I'm sure she would be very proud to see how you're growing." Emma nodded slowly, absorbing the information. "Is that why you get sad sometimes, Daddy?" William felt his chest tighten. He hadn't realized that his sadness was so visible to his daughter. "Yes, sometimes I get sad remembering your mother, but I get happy when I see you playing and learning new things." "I'm also happy now," said Emma simply, "especially when we do things together, like today in the garden." After putting Emma to bed, William went down to his office, but couldn't concentrate on work. The conversation during dinner had affected him in a way he hadn't experienced in a long time. He realized that, by avoiding talking about his wife, he had deprived Emma of knowing her mother through his memories. Around 10 o'clock, he left the office and went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. He found Sophia organizing Emma's activity schedule for the following day. She was sitting at the table, writing in a small notebook, surrounded by children's books and school material. "Sorry to disturb you," he said. "I just came to get some water." "You're not disturbing," responded Sophia, raising her eyes from the notebook. "I was organizing some activities for tomorrow." Emma showed interest in learning about medicinal plants, so I thought about doing a small research with her on the internet. William served himself water and, instead of immediately returning to the office, sat at the table. It was the first time he had talked alone with Sophia since the day of the interview, and he realized he felt curious about her. "May I ask why you really decided to leave nursing?" he said. "I have the impression that there were more reasons besides what you mentioned in the interview." Sophia paused for a moment, as she always did before responding to personal questions. "I lost a patient, a 6-year-old girl. I did everything I could, followed all the protocols, but it wasn't enough. After that, I began to question if I was in the right profession." William nodded, understanding better Sophia's career change. "And you feel better taking care of healthy children?" "Actually, I feel better taking care of a specific child for a long period. At the hospital, I saw many children quickly, but here I can really follow Emma's development. I can make a lasting difference in her life." "You already are," said William, surprising himself with his own spontaneity. "Emma has changed a lot since you arrived. She's happier, more communicative." Sophia smiled. She just needed someone who truly paid attention. Emma is an amazing girl, intelligent and sensitive. She just hadn't had the opportunity to show that completely. William remained silent for a few seconds, absorbing Sophia's words. I feel that I failed her as a father, that I closed myself too much after my wife died and let Emma grow up alone. Sophia observed him attentively before responding. You haven't failed. You were dealing with your own loss, your own pain. Emma understands that, even being a child. She just needs to know that she's still important to you, that she's still loved. I don't know if I'm good at demonstrating that, admitted William. I lost my way after my wife passed away. She was the one who brought joy to the house, who knew how to express affection. I've always been more reserved. There are many ways to demonstrate love, said Sophia gently. You work hard to give Emma a comfortable life. That's also a form of care, but perhaps it's time to try other forms as well. William nodded slowly. You're right. I need to learn to be a father again, or perhaps be a father in a different way. Emma would be very happy if you participated more in her activities. It doesn't need to be anything complicated, just being present, listening, showing interest in her world. The conversation continued for a few more minutes, touching on subjects about education, child development, and Emma's emotional needs. William realized that Sophia had a deep knowledge about child psychology, probably acquired during her years as a pediatric nurse. When he finally stood up to go to sleep, William felt different. The conversation with Sophia had opened a new perspective on his relationship with Emma. He had spent years believing that providing financially was enough, that his physical presence in the house was sufficient. But he was beginning to understand that Emma needed something more. She needed his emotional attention, his genuine interest in her life, his active participation in her growth. In the following months, life in William's house assumed a completely new rhythm. The mornings gained the sound of laughter coming from the kitchen, where Emma and Sophia experimented with different recipes each week. The afternoons were filled with piano music, which Emma finally played with enthusiasm, especially when Sophia sat beside her to listen. The evenings brought conversations at the dinner table, moments when the three shared stories about the day and made plans for the near future. William began to arrive home earlier when possible, discovering that participating in the family routine gave him an unexpected pleasure. He helped Emma with her homework, listened to her stories about English and piano classes, followed the progress of the garden she took care of with so much affection. For the first time in years, he felt that he really knew his daughter. One Friday afternoon, William returned from the office and found the house strangely silent. He called for Emma and Sophia but received no answer. He went up the stairs and found Emma's bedroom door ajar. He approached silently and saw a scene that deeply moved him. Emma was lying in bed with a high fever, and Sophia remained seated beside her, passing a cool, damp cloth on the girl's forehead. The two were talking in whispers, and Sophia was telling a story about brave princesses to distract Emma from the discomfort. There was an intimacy in that moment that William had rarely witnessed, a genuine connection that went far beyond the professional relationship. "How is she?" asked William softly, entering the room. "The fever started after lunch," responded Sophia, without taking her eyes off Emma. "I already gave her the antipyretic that the pediatrician prescribed last time. It should start taking effect soon." William approached the bed and touched his daughter's forehead. Emma opened her eyes and smiled weakly at him. "Hi, Daddy. Sophia is taking care of me. She said tomorrow I'll be well enough to play in the garden." "I'm sure you will," said William, kissing her forehead. "Do you need anything? I just want you both to stay here with me." William looked at Sophia, who nodded discreetly. He pulled up a chair and sat on the other side of the bed, holding his daughter's small hand. During the following hours, the three remained together in the room. Sophia continued telling stories, William asked questions about the characters, and Emma laughed quietly despite the fever. When Emma finally fell asleep around 9 in the evening, William and Sophia went down silently to the kitchen. Sophia prepared tea for both of them, and they sat at the table talking about the day and about Emma. "Thank you for taking care of her like this," said William. "You have a special way with children." "Emma makes everything easy," responded Sophia. "She's an extraordinary girl, intelligent, sensitive, affectionate. You should be very proud of her." "I am. And I'm also very grateful for everything you've done for us." "This house has completely changed since you arrived." Sophia smiled, but William noticed something different in her expression. There was a subtle melancholy that he couldn't completely identify. "Did something happen?" he asked. Sophia hesitated for a moment before responding. I received a job offer today. A family in Boston. They offer a much better salary and the opportunity to travel abroad with them. William felt something strange in his chest, a feeling of emptiness that caught him off guard. The possibility of Sophia leaving hadn't crossed his mind until that moment. She had become such a natural part of the family routine that he couldn't imagine what life would be like without her. Are you thinking of accepting? He asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. I haven't decided yet. It's an interesting professional opportunity, but I've become attached to you both, to Emma especially. It would be difficult to leave her now. William realized that his feelings toward Sophia were more complex than he had admitted to himself. In the previous months, he had gotten used not only to the affection she showed toward Emma, but also to her presence in the house, to her intelligent conversations, to the tranquility she brought to the environment. Sophia, may I ask you a personal question? He said. Of course. Why have you never married? It's not empty curiosity. It's that you would be a wonderful mother, and any man would be lucky to have you as a wife. Sophia lowered her eyes to the cup of tea, as she always did when she needed to organize her thoughts. I was close to marriage once, but I discovered that my boyfriend was more interested in my financial stability than in me. Since then, I've been more cautious with relationships. William nodded, understanding. Sometimes, people disappoint us, but that doesn't mean we should give up completely. And you? Asked Sophia softly. Have you never thought about marrying again? Emma would love to have a mother. William remained silent for a long time. I couldn't imagine anyone replacing my wife. She was special, cheerful, spontaneous, full of life. Everything I'm not. You're more special than you imagine, said Sophia. You just express it differently. Emma tells me about how you work hard to give her a good life, about how you're proud when she learns something new, about how you've been more affectionate in the last few weeks. That's also love. The conversation was interrupted by a cry coming from upstairs. Emma had woken up and was calling for them. They went up together, and Sophia checked the girl's temperature, which had decreased considerably. Emma asked them to stay a little longer until she fell asleep again. While Sophia arranged the blankets and checked if Emma was comfortable, William observed the scene with sudden clarity. This wasn't just a nanny taking care of a child. It was a woman who genuinely loved his daughter, who had become an essential part of their lives, and he had fallen in love with this woman without realizing it. The next morning, Emma woke up completely recovered, animated and hungry. During breakfast, she announced that she wanted to do something special to thank Sophia for the care from the previous night. Can I make a cake, Daddy? Sophia taught me a recipe that's very easy. William agreed, and the three spent the morning in the kitchen, preparing a chocolate cake with strawberry frosting. Emma was radiant, covering William and Sophia with flour while beating the batter, laughing when the mixture splashed out of the bowl. When the cake was baking in the oven, Emma asked the two to sit in the living room while she prepared a surprise. A few minutes later, she returned carrying a sheet of paper and colored pencils. I made a drawing for you, she said, extending the paper so they could see it together. It was a drawing of the house, but this time it wasn't empty. Emma had drawn the three of them at the front door, she in the middle holding the hands of William and Sophia. Above the house, there was a large yellow sun, and around it, colorful flowers everywhere. This is how I see our family now, said Emma simply. William felt his eyes water. That word, family, echoed in his mind with unexpected force. Emma had expressed through the childish drawing exactly what he had been feeling in the last few weeks, without being able to put into words. It's beautiful, Emma, said Sophia, but William noticed that she was also emotional. It's the most beautiful drawing I've ever seen. Can I hang it in my room? Asked Emma. Of course you can, responded William. Actually, I think we should frame it and hang it in the living room for everyone to see. That afternoon, after Emma left for her piano lesson, William made a decision. He found Sophia organizing the books in the library and asked to talk to her. Sophia, about the job offer you received. Do you think I should accept it? She asked, without looking at him directly. I think you should follow your heart, but I need to tell you something before you make your decision. William took a deep breath, gathering courage to talk about feelings he had kept hidden for so long. In the last few weeks, I realized that my feelings for you have changed. You're not just Emma's nanny. You've become part of our family in a way I didn't expect, And I've fallen in love with you. Sophia raised her eyes, surprised. Mr. Anderson? William, just William. And I know it might be complicated, that you might not feel the same, but I needed to be honest. Emma loves you like a mother, and I love you as a man. I don't want you to leave. Sophia remained silent for a long time, looking out the library window. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but firm. I've fallen in love with you too, William, and with Emma. You've become the family I've always dreamed of having. But I'm afraid this might complicate things, that we might hurt Emma if something goes wrong between us. Then let's make it work, said William, approaching her. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be true. He held her hands between his, feeling how perfectly they fit. Sophia didn't pull away. Instead, she smiled in a way William had never seen before, a smile that illuminated her entire face. Emma arrived from her piano lesson, finding the two talking in the library, holding hands. The girl stopped at the door, observing the scene with a thoughtful expression. Are you going to get married? She asked directly, with the honesty typical of children. William and Sophia looked at each other, both laughing at Emma's direct question. We would very much like to get married, responded William. But only if you agree. Would you like to have Sophia as your official mother? Emma ran to them and hugged them tightly. I've wanted this since the first day she arrived. You're my real family now. 6 months later, in an intimate ceremony in the house's garden, William and Sophia got married, surrounded by close friends and Mrs. Jenkins, who cried emotionally throughout the celebration. Emma was the maid of honor, carrying a bouquet of flowers that she herself had cultivated in her special garden. After the ceremony, while the guests celebrated, the three moved away for a private moment. Emma held the hands of her adoptive parents, looking at the house that now really seemed complete. Now we're a family forever, she said, with the absolute conviction of a child who had finally found her place in the world. William looked at Sophia, then at Emma, and finally understood that he had found something much greater than he had thought possible. It wasn't just the return of love to his life, but the discovery that a family can be rebuilt, that wounded hearts can heal, and that sometimes the best things arrive when we least expect them. Sophia smiled, holding the hand of her daughter and husband, knowing that she had found her true purpose, not just as a nurse who saved lives, but as a woman and mother who helped hearts reconnect. The house, once silent and cold, now echoed with laughter, conversations and music. Emma's garden flourished in vibrant colors, just like the family that had finally learned to cultivate love in all its forms. The end. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of William, Sophia, and Emma has deeply touched your hearts. This narrative shows us that love can arise in the most unexpected moments, and that a family can be built not only by blood ties, but by the ties of the heart. If you were moved by this journey of discovery, healing, and rebirth, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to follow other equally engaging stories. Leave your like on this video and share in the comments how this story made you feel. Every day we bring narratives that explore the complexity of human relationships, the transformative power of love, and the beauty of new beginnings. Don't miss our next content, as each story is an opportunity to reflect on our own lives and relationships. We await you in the comments to share your impressions and experiences. Until the next story.